Hey guys, welcome back to Recap-kun. Today, I will tell you about a new fantasy anime called The Black Summoner. The story begins with a young man named Kelvin, who has just been reincarnated into a new world. He died by mistake of a god, so he was allowed to choose the skills he would have in his new life. Kelvin wakes up with no idea where he is. A menu appears, welcoming him into the new world. He pushes the start button and hears a voice that begins to welcome him. It tells him that he has been reincarnated into a fantasy world and his memories have been wiped, a condition he had agreed to for more powerful skills. Kelvin is shocked why his past self would agree to have his memories erased. The status window opens, showing the skills he had chosen. He has a summoning skill that's S rank and an ability to get double the stats from leveling up. Seeing his skills, Kelvin gets excited to start his adventure. The voice tells him to head to the nearby town and register at the guild to be an adventurer. Along his way, Kelvin asks the menu if it will be joining him on his adventure. Remembering that he had his memories wiped, it reveals it is actually the goddess of reincarnation, Melfina, who he fell in love with and asked to be his servant. And she accepted his request as a way to take a vacation from her job. Kelvin is confused how he could love her without his memories. He asks if he can summon her, but she tells him he needs to become stronger and have more mana before he can. He arrives at the Adventurers Guild and registers as a basic mage, keeping his summoner skill a secret as Melfina explains summoners are so rare that kings would start wars to acquire him. He starts off in the lowest F rank and the clerk explains that you can only take missions up to 1 rank higher than your own and can move up a rank if you complete 10 missions in a row. He takes his first job to slay some blue slimes. He picks up a wooden rod, which helps to boost his magic ability, and heads to the fields. He comes across 3 slimes. Melfina tells him to try out his other S-rank skill, Appraising Eye. It allows him to see all of the slime's stats. At S rank, he can see the stats of anyone up to 100 levels above him. Melfina tells him he can tame the slime if he can injure it first. Kelvin attacks using his rod instead of magic, so he doesn't kill it in one shot. To his surprise, the slimes are more challenging than expected, but eventually he is able to land a hit on it, weakening it enough for him to tame it. The taming is successful and he names it Clotho. He summons it and it seems to have gained a personality as it jumps up and down. Together with Clotho, they take on some more slimes. Kelvin uses his wind magic, taking out a slime in one hit, and Clotho runs circles around and crushes the other. Kelvin notices that Clotho is much stronger since becoming his summon. Melfina explains that his S-rank summoner skill gives his servants a bonus 100 to all stats. She also tells him he is the only S-rank summoner in this world, with others only at B or C rank. Kelvin returns to the town and looks for an inn to spend the night. Along the way, he sees an elf locked in a cage. He is disturbed to find slavery is common in this world but tries not to think about it. He gets a room at the inn and enjoys his first meal in the world. Kelvin starts grinding, leveling up and learning new skills. He learns the concealment skill, which allows him to hide his stats and summoner skill from others. Clotho was even able to evolve into a gigantic gluttonous slime. A week later, Kelvin is already promoted up to E rank. He is drawing attention to himself, completing his mission solo and getting promoted so quickly. A D-rank adventurer, Cashel, introduces himself. He has a reputation around the guild for crushing new adventurers. He proposes that Kelvin join his party on a D-rank hunt for a black ghost knight. With his appraisal skill, Kelvin sees that Cashel has a murderer title. Instead of joining him, he suggests they compete to see who can kill the monster first. Cashel leaves and joins up with his criminal party members, Gimmel and Raj. They plot to murder Kelvin. At a ruined castle, Cashel and his party arrive. They're shocked to find that all the monsters are already dead. Kelvin appears and tells them that he has seen through their scheme and challenges them to a fight. He makes fun of Raj, who charges straight at him. He falls into a trap which Kelvin has hidden with his concealment skill. Raj gets stuck and begins to sink. Kelvin attacks with his wind magic and Gimmel makes a run for it. However, Clotho blocks his exit and chases him back in. Clotho takes Gimmel out with a single hit and binds Raj. Cashel charges at Kelvin but is also easily beaten up. They confess to hunting new players for experience and Kelvin ties them up to turn them in after. Kelvin continues his hunt. He comes across the monster and asks it to join his party. It turns out his name is Gerard and is surprisingly nice, like an old uncle, even giving Kelvin some candy. Gerard explains he was once a human knight but became a black ghost after he died. Before he can agree to join Kelvin, he must first see his strength. They have a duel and Gerard is able to block all of Clotho's attacks. Gerard slashes back at Kelvin, which he barely dodges. As Clotho continues to attack, Kelvin uses his air magic to bind Gerard's movements. Gerard remembers his purpose. He wants revenge on an elf named Gildora who destroyed the kingdom he served and led to the death of his wife and daughter. With this memory, Gerard breaks free from Kelvin's magic and charges at him. Kelvin binds him once again and Clotho fires a huge beam attack at Gerard. The next day, Kelvin supplies a piece of Gerard's armor as proof he completed the job. Everyone in the guild is amazed at his accomplishment. This, combined with catching Cashel, leads to Kelvin receiving a special promotion up to D rank. Gerard joins Clotho and Melfina as Kelvin's newest monster. Kelvin runs into Leo, the guild master. He is shocked when Leo asks if he is from another world. Kelvin realizes Leo's appraisal skill is stronger than his concealment skill, so he can see all his stats and skills. In the guildmaster's room, Kelvin has no choice but to admit to being a summoner. He confronts Leo about why he did nothing about Cashel, and Leo admits he knew Cashel was a murderer, but because he was a noble of the Tricyn nation, he needed to get proof, so he is grateful to Kelvin for dealing with him. Getting to the point of the conversation, Leo expresses his desire to become friends with Kelvin, noting he's met otherworlders in the past, such as the heroes of the Holy Empire Doremus. Melfina notes that she was the one who reincarnated them and promises to tell Kelvin more later. Leo continues his explanation about the heroes of Doremus, claiming that the priestess there foretold of the revival of the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord's influence has caused all other monsters to become stronger and more aggressive. Seeing that Kelvin already possesses the skills of an S-ranked adventurer, Leo asks him to protect the town in the stead of the heroes. They come to an agreement after Leo offers him a number of incentives, like increasing his rank and assistance on missions. Afterward, back at the inn, the innkeeper Claire congratulates him for reaching B rank. Enjoying his lunch in his room, Kelvin asks Melfina about the heroes of Doremus. She tells him that 1 year ago the priestess of the Doremus Empire performed a summoning ritual, so she reincarnated other people and had chosen them due to their good looks and knowledge. After hearing this, Kelvin retrieves his reward money from Clotho, whom he has been using for storage, thanks to his gluttonous ability. He heads off to the alleyway where the slaves are being sold. He tells Gerard he plans to train a slave to become his rear guard to boost his party's strength. Upon reaching the alleyway, there is a man on fire. Kelvin spots the half-elf that he saw from the other day. The slave trader reveals nobody wishes to purchase her because she is cursed and will burn anyone that touches her. With his appraisal skill, Kelvin sees that she is cursed by the Fire Dragon King. He learns from Melfina that the only way to remove this would be an A-ranked white magic spell called Sacred Bless. Kelvin leaves as the elf watches him. Later, Kelvin returns and offers to buy the elf. The slave trader is confused why he would want a cursed slave, but he gives in when Kelvin hands him a bag of gold. As they head back to the inn, the elf introduces herself as Aphil, and thanks Kelvin for buying her. When Kelvin approaches her, she backs away, scared to hurt him with her curse. Kelvin casts Sacred Bless on her and breaks the curse. Finally being able to touch someone for the first time, Aphil breaks down and cries in gratitude to Kelvin. They return to the inn and Aphil is taken under the wing of Claire. Aphil is dressed up in a maid's outfit and they enjoy dinner together. After that, Kelvin reveals his secrets to her, telling her that he is a summoner and introducing her to Gerard and Clotho. He helps her with allocating her skill points and lets her choose to let her learn to make her own decisions. At night, however, they are forced to share a bed, causing Kelvin to experience a sleepless night. 1 month later, Aphil has become a deadly archer. By combining the Dragon King's blessing in archery, she has created her own original skill. At the guild, Angie, the guild secretary, congratulates them on another successful mission. Angie has become friends with Aphil and tells her about a new dessert cafe in town. They decide to go check it out and Aphil invites Kelvin to join them. The next day, the three meet up and Kelvin is stunned by how cute Aphil looks. They head to the cafe and Kelvin becomes embarrassed when Aphil tries to feed him. Everyone watches them, jealous that Kelvin is on a date with two girls. Suddenly their table is knocked over. The third prince of Trison, Tibura, and his two guards interrupt. The prince arrogantly sends his guards to grab Angie and Aphil, so Kelvin beats them up and sends them flying. Kelvin binds him with his magic and forces him to explain his business. Tibura admits he came to hire a rumored strong adventurer to boost his poor reputation. Kelvin reveals he is the adventurer and refuses Tibura's offer. Meanwhile, Melfina visits the Temple of Doremus. She appears before Colette the Oracle, who shows her how the heroes have been progressing. Melfina imparts a prophecy, ordering the heroes to deal with an evil in the west and to stay away from Parth, where Kelvin is staying. Melfina leaves just as the heroes arrive and Colette informs them of their new mission. Back at the inn, Aphil asks if Kelvin finds her attractive. Kelvin becomes flustered and Aphil tells him she loves him. Kelvin reassures her but resists his desire as she is still a slave and he feels he would be taking advantage. The next day, Melfina shows Kelvin the stats of the heroes of Doremus. Kelvin is not impressed, seeing that they are only around level 50 after a whole year. Melfina is also disappointed in them and sees that Kelvin has already almost surpassed them. Claire interrupts, telling them that the guild has called for them. Kelvin meets with Leo, who tells him that a sealed demon was discovered in a hidden room of a dungeon. Melfina tells him that demons are among the most powerful beings in this world. Leo mentions the trouble he caused by attacking the Trison prince and Kelvin quickly accepts the mission. Kelvin and his party head into the dungeon. They head through the cave and come to the hidden room. As they enter, they find the sealed demon, but there is a second demon who introduces itself as Victor, the archdemon. Kelvin asks about the sealed demon and Victor reveals she is the daughter of the most recently defeated demon lord. She was sealed by a magic that only a human can break. Victor hopes that by eating Kelvin he will gain the human ability to break the seal and then he will eat the girl to become the next demon lord himself. Victor blocks the exit and charges at them, which Gerard manages to block. Kelvin tries to restrain his movements but Victor easily breaks free. Kelvin gets excited to face such a strong opponent. Victor levels the playing field, summoning skeletons with his black magic. The skeletons attack but Kelvin and his party are able to defend themselves and easily able to take them out. Victor admires their teamwork. He punches the ground and creates a smoke screen, however Kelvin tracks him with his magic, predicting his next move. Victor attacks from underground but Gerard blocks the hit thanks to Kelvin's warning. An arm tries to grab Kelvin but he manages to dodge it. Victor overpowers Gerard and blasts him away. Victor continues to attack Kelvin with his arm and closes in on him. Kelvin calls for Clotho, who attaches itself on Victor's arm and begins to absorb his magic. While he is distracted, Kelvin casts his binding spell and seals one of Victor's arms. Victor tries to free himself, while Kelvin buffs Gerard's sword with his Vortex Edge spell. Victor tries to counterattack with his other arm but Aphil emerges from stealth and fires a blazing arrow. Victor blocks the arrow, sacrificing his arm and Gerard slashes and severs the other. Victor doesn't give up, he covers himself with a black smoke and begins to transform. The trio tries to attack before he completes his transformation, but they are too late. With his new form, Victor dashes to attack. Gerard manages to block him and even push him back. He continues his attack but gets knocked down by Victor. Aphil provides support with her arrows and Kelvin summons Clotho, who spews tons of cursed weapons down on him, all of Kelvin's failures from blacksmithing. Kelvin, Aphil, and Clotho all attack with their strongest moves, combining together and devastating Victor. He's sent flying and a stone pillar breaks and falls towards Sarah. Victor protects her with the last of his strength and falls. Kelvin asks why he protected her. Victor admits he was never going to eat Sarah. In reality, Victor was Sarah's caretaker. He taught her how to fight and was her only companion. However, one day, they were attacked by the Empire's hero and before he died, to keep her safe, Sarah's father sealed her away and told Victor to watch over her. Victor had planned to revive Sarah in a weaker era where she could have ruled as the Demon King. As his dying request, Victor asks Kelvin to add Sarah to his party so she can finally see the world. Kelvin agrees and Victor dies peacefully. Despite the risk she will become the next Demon King, Kelvin breaks her seal. Sarah wakes up aware of her situation and cries for Victor. Kelvin reports his success to the other adventurers and pretends Sarah was one of Victor's victims. With her magic hairband, she is able to hide her wings and horns. Gerard evolves into an Abyssal Knight Commander, an S-ranked monster, gaining a massive buff to his stats. Sarah worries about joining the team, but Kelvin assures her with his S-rank concealment skill, no one will find out she is the daughter of the Demon Lord. The team heads back to town and Sarah is amazed and excited by everything around. She had always been alone and this is her first time in a town. Later, Kelvin checks in with Leo at the guild, who promotes him to A rank for defeating Victor. When he gets back to the inn, there is a surprise party to celebrate his promotion. They have a crazy night and everyone ends up passed out drunk. Outside, Sarah mourns for Victor, who was her only childhood companion. She decides to experience the entire world in Victor's memory, in particular, to see the ocean and learn to swim like Victor once promised her. Sometime after, Kelvin and Aphil's crafting skills reach S rank and the party gets new gear. Sarah gets a new outfit and gauntlets created from Victor's carapace, and Gerard gets a new demonic sword called the Dainsleif. Kelvin gets tired after all the crafting and Aphil offers to make him some food. He asks for rice, but Aphil doesn't know what that is. Kelvin goes mad craving rice, which he hasn't been able to eat since coming to this world. The party heads off to the coastal city Torich, where rice can be found and Sarah can see more of the world. Gerard reports that Malfina is missing. She had told Kelvin that since he can't summon her, she left to try and possess one of her proxies, so she could join them in the physical world. Gerard suspects Malfina is jealous of the two ladies in the party. Along their journey, their carriage is stopped by a woman and a gang of bandits appear. They boast about being the infamous gang known as Black Wind. Kelvin checks their stats and sees that they are only around level 30. He tells Sarah to deal with them and tells her not to use her new gauntlets. Sarah sends a bandit flying and is surprised he was so weak. One of the bandits attacks with his giant hammer, but Sarah effortlessly stops him and pushes him away. Sarah ties them all up, but the woman boasts about their boss who is level 70, causing Kelvin to be interested and interrogate her. The group makes it to Torich, and Sarah is amazed at the sight of the ocean, remembering her promise with Victor to swim. Kelvin agrees to teach her, but first they head to the guild and turn in the bandits. Kelvin meets with Mist, the guild master in Torich. She has heard all about Kelvin from Leo, who she used to be in a party with. Kelvin informs Mist that the boss of Black Wind is actually the champion of Tryson named Kristoff. He pretended to destroy the gang but instead took over it from the shadows and is involved with illegal slave trading. Kristoff is in town, but they can't accuse him without solid proof. Kelvin is actually not too interested because Kristoff is only level 70 and poses no challenge. Suddenly, Kelvin detects the presence of the Empire's heroes and suggests that they can handle the bandits. With this suggestion, Mist requests the heroes to investigate the bandit hideout. Wanting to help the people, they accept the request. However, Kelvin has something planned. At the bandit hideout, there is a room of kidnapped women. One of the bandits enters. He tries to grab one of the girls, but Kelvin arrives and Gerard knocks him out. Meanwhile, Kristoff and his lieutenants discuss the loss of one of their squads. There is a knock at the door and Kelvin's party bursts in. Kristoff wants to get even for his friends. However, Kelvin is not there to fight them. He quickly ends things with Kristoff to prepare for the main event. The heroes arrive at the hideout. They find it strange that it's empty. They come across Clotho and try to fight it, but one of the slaves protect it, saying it belongs to their savior. They introduce themselves as the heroes of Doremus. Upon hearing this, all the slaves are relieved. One of the heroes is also a summoner and is able to talk to Clotho. He tells her he was left to protect the slaves. One of the slaves urged the heroes to help Kelvin with the bandits. The heroes rush on ahead and find the defeated Kristoff and his lieutenants on the floor, thinking that they were the adventurers who had saved the slaves. Kelvin and his party pretend to be bandits and are confronted by the four heroes of the Empire: Toya, Setsuna, Mizoka, and Miyabi. Kelvin taunts the heroes and challenges them to a game. He offers to fight them all by himself, with the loser forced to obey an order from the winner. Toya doesn't want to fight in such a dishonorable way, but Setsuna cautions him and convinces him to fight together. They all agree and accept Kelvin's game. While the heroes plan, Aphil reveals Kelvin's plan to order the heroes to act as witnesses to Kristoff's involvement with the bandits and get around his protection from Tryson. Gerard comments on how Calvin is such a battle junkie, pretending to be bandits just to fight with the heroes. Ifil is worried for him and tells him not to underestimate them just because they are lower level than him. Calvin is however keen to test his abilities and his new skill Eater gloves. The heroes begin their attack by first summoning their spirits to boost their power. Toya charges in, but Calvin counters with a blast of magic. While the heroes defend against the attack, Calvin dashes past and approaches Mizoka. However, she calls out her dragon who breathes fire at Calvin. Calvin enhances his speed and manages to dodge the flames. He appears behind Miyabi and uses his skill Eater glove to steal her skill. Sarah explains that each glove can copy one skill at a time and that she also let Calvin borrow one of her skills. With this, Calvin steals Miyabi's unique skill, parallel processing. Toya rushes to help, but Calvin dodges his strikes. Setsuna and Mizoka heal Miyabi while Toya continues to fight on his own, believing he has the advantage in close quarters. However, Calvin fights back thanks to borrowing Sarah's S-ranked fighter skill. He overwhelms Toya, but Setsuna comes to his aid. Calvin dodges her slash and summons a giant wall to defend himself. Setsuna uses her unique ability to cut through anything to destroy the wall with a single slash. But as the wall disappears, Calvin lunges toward her. He fires an enormous fireball at her, but Toya manages to get him in the way and block the attack. Mizoka tries to heal him, but Toya claims he is okay, proclaiming that this is nothing if he is to defeat the Demon Lord one day, but Setsuna slaps him. She is mad he sacrificed himself and tells him he needs to cherish himself more and rely on his team. Mizoka and Miyabi both agree and Toya apologizes, and they agree to fight as a team again. As Calvin prepares to continue their fight, a spirit appears and explodes with a blinding light. Mizoka uses her frost spell to freeze him in place, and Miyabi uses her gravity magic to further restrict his movements. With Calvin locked in place, Toya and Setsuna charge at him, but Calvin uses his detonation spell, causing a huge explosion around him. Toya and Setsuna are caught by the explosion, but both manage to survive thanks to protection from their spirits. As the smoke clears, Calvin applauds their attempt. The heroes are shocked he is completely unharmed from the explosion. Calvin criticizes their amateur approach and even gives them hints on how to improve. He calls out Toya for not using his unique skill. Realizing he can't hide it, Toya reveals the true form of his sword, splitting into two swords, allowing him to dual wield. He rushes at Calvin once again but is backed up by his team. Mizoka uses her ultimate spell, Frozen Temple, which creates a massive pillar of ice and completely binds Calvin. Miyabi summons her strongest minion, the Grave Ogre. Sarah taunts Calvin from the sidelines, offering to rescue him, which he declines. Miyabi then attacks with a blast of dark energy, but Calvin calls forth some golems to absorb the attack. He orders them to buy him 30 seconds and begins to create a new spell to free himself from his predicament. Normally new spells can take days to create, but thanks to the parallel processing he stole, he can speed up the process. Mizoka warns the others about the new spell and Setsuna slashes through the golems. However, Calvin finishes creating his spell and unleashes a barrage of energy that simultaneously destroys all of the ice, freeing himself. Setsuna lunges at him and slashes, but Calvin is faster than her and delivers a blow to her stomach. He easily dodges the ogre's attacks with his speed and knocks out Miyabi. Mizoka tries to help, riding on her dragon, but gets blown out of the sky. Toya catches her and becomes enraged. He attacks wildly at Calvin but ultimately gets knocked out with a single punch. When Toya wakes up, he finds the rest of his team with him. The young slave girl sits on Calvin's lap with Clotho and Toya demands that Calvin let her go. Calvin tells him to have a better look and he realizes that the girl is there willingly and that Calvin was actually the adventurer that saved them. Toya is confused why they didn't just clear up the misunderstanding but realizes how Calvin had given them tips to help them improve. He admits defeat and thanks Calvin, calling him his master. Calvin reminds him that they promised to obey his order. Toya is prepared for anything, but Calvin orders them to strip their clothes, causing them all to be embarrassed. He has them all change into swim clothes and takes them to a sea cave to train. The heroes struggle as they fight against a giant octopus. Its skin is too soft and slippery to cut through. Calvin watches on, unimpressed, yelling out ways to help them improve. Eventually the heroes manage to defeat the octopus and the group have a break for lunch. Calvin notes how they struggled against the octopus, so they stand no chance against a dungeon boss or the demon lord. Kelvin asks what they would do if they come across a monster they cannot defeat. Meanwhile, Sarah has fished up the dungeon boss dragon. Toya says they would retreat to train and prepare, and fight it again once they were stronger. Kelvin is satisfied with this answer and goes to handle the dragon. After that, the heroes take their leave, getting on a ship to the western continent. Kelvin gives them some pendants as a parting gift and they say their goodbyes. As Kelvin watches them sail away, he asks Gerard about the western continent. It's home to the elves that destroyed Gerard's kingdom, and Kelvin asks if they are strong enough to get revenge. Gerard is touched that Kelvin remembers and suggests that they would be able to. Sarah interrupts and mentions that they are being summoned by the Queen of Torridge. They go to the castle, which Kelvin recognizes as looking Japanese. Gerard mentions the first king of Torridge was also said to be from another world. They enter the castle and pay their respects to the queen. She thanks them for resolving the issues with the bandits and for defeating the dragon boss. She offers to reward them, but all Kelvin asks for is to have some of her rice. The queen is amused at the request and grants him a lifetime supply. They have a feast, and Kelvin finally gets to have some rice. The others watch on amused as Kelvin has his fill of rice. A few days later, Kelvin has been staying at the castle at the request of the queen. Ifil brings him his lunch and she has already mastered all of the Japanese dishes. The queen joins him for lunch, saying that Ifil makes the best food she has ever had. She tries to convince Kelvin to give Ifil to her, but he turns her down. She then attempts to proposition Kelvin to stay in Torridge and take care of her, personally. But he quickly declines and suggests it's time for them to leave. To get back to Parth, the queen lets them use the teleportation gate. Back in the city, Kelvin buys a new house for the party. He even hires 2 of the slaves he freed, Ellie and her daughter Luca, as household servants. At night, Kelvin has trouble getting used to his new bed. He quickly gets up as he senses Malfina's return with her avatar body. She tells him that he can now summon her and that she will win his heart. Kelvin summons her as her angelic presence is revealed. She asks him what he thinks, and he becomes nervous and sees how his past self fell in love with her at first sight. She introduces herself to the rest of the party, finally meeting them all in person. She teases Kelvin, calling herself his first wife. Malfina gives Kelvin a gift for successfully summoning her. She draws a red flower and blesses Kelvin as the goddess of reincarnation. The blessing has 2 effects, the first being protection from any fatal attacks once a month. Sarah is excited to try it out in her next sparring match with Kelvin. And the second effect is the ability to summon heroes. Sarah spars against Malfina, while Gerard and Luca watch. Sarah transforms her arm to a demonic claw, but Malfina counters with her divine spear. The spear is destroyed, but so is Sarah's claw. Meanwhile, Kelvin thinks about summoning a hero, but worries it means forcing someone to come to the world against their will. The fight between Sarah and Malfina ends, with both being evenly matched. Gerard asks why they fought so seriously. They tell him that they were fighting over who had the right to sleep with Kelvin. After that, Malfina surprises Kelvin with some chocolate. She asks what's on his mind, and Kelvin shares his worries and asks why heroes are needed in this world. She explains that all demon lords possess 2 special skills. The first is that they can cause anyone to go insane, and the second is that they are invulnerable to all damage. But heroes are an exception to both these skills, since they come from another world. Their magic is different and they are able to kill the demon lord. Kelvin still feels guilty about summoning someone, so Malfina tells him he can just summon people who have died, so it wouldn't feel like kidnapping someone, but more like giving them a second chance. Kelvin feels better about this suggestion and asks if he gets to choose who he summons. Malfina tells him that it's random and that there is no rush to make a decision. Later that night, Kelvin makes up his mind and decides to reincarnate a hero immediately. He casts the summoning spell, spending all his mana to summon the strongest hero possible. There is a strike of lightning and a young girl named Rio is summoned. Kelvin introduces himself and Rio is grateful to be reincarnated. Rio collapses after just being reincarnated. Kelvin wonders if she is really a hero, but Malfina assures him that she is the best. Soon after, Kelvin also collapses, having used up all his mana. When Rio wakes up, we find out she had suffered from a terminal illness. She meets with Kelvin outside, who tells her about his own experience being reincarnated. Rio is grateful for her new healthy body and offers to join Kelvin's party to repay him. Kelvin tells her that people with black hair are rare in this world, so he tells her to pretend to be his younger half-sister. Rio likes the idea and is excited to have an elder brother. Kelvin is bothered by her name, as it reminds him of the guildmaster Leo. So Rio decides to change her name to Rion. Later that night, Kelvin wakes up and finds that Sarah has snuck onto his bed. He gets grabbed and finds that Melfina is also there. Under the covers, he sees Rion, who also snuck in. He takes a moment and reflects on his new life. The next day, Kelvin takes Rion to a dungeon. Ellie asks why they were brought along and Kelvin tells her that they should level up a bit for their own safety. Luca is scared of the monsters, but Kelvin tells her they don't need to fight. He has an XP sharing skill, so as his party kills the monsters, everyone will level up. They are attacked by a shadow wolf, but Kelvin easily restrains it with his spell and tames it as a pet dog for Rion. Ephiel notices the adventurer old and his party approaching. They explain they are here to slay monsters for their promotion exam to rank B. Kelvin introduces his new party members and the adventurers get jealous of how many girls there are and run off. Sarah and Gerard return after seeing Old's party and ask what they were doing. Kelvin tells them they were here for their exam, but Sarah becomes nervous and reveals that they actually already killed all the monsters in the dungeon. Ephiel uses her Farsight ability to check and there are no monsters left. Kelvin ends up apologizing to Old, but he is just amazed at how strong Kelvin has become, excited that Kelvin will be taking the S-rank promotion exam soon. This comes as a shock to Kelvin, not knowing that Leo had put him up for the promotion exam to S-rank. They give the wolf a bath and Rion reveals that she named him Alex. Thanks to one of her skills, she is able to understand him. Over the next few weeks, Rion trains with the other members of the party and bonds with Alex. One night, Sarah detects a number of intruders. There are 14 of them and Kelvin checks their stats, using the Farsight skill he borrowed from Ephiel. They are all only around level 20, so Kelvin decides to test Rion. Rion is nervous at first but soon agrees to do it. Kelvin sends a piece of Clotho with him and gives him a new mithril sword. The intruders are former teammates of Kristoff, seeking revenge against Kelvin. Rion fights against the intruders while Kelvin and Sarah watch from afar and assess his skills. Rion defeats all the intruders and celebrates her first victory. While Sarah cleans up the mess, Kelvin confronts the leader of the intruders and captures him. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Tryson, the Emperor Zell has a meeting with his generals, Prince Asgrad, Tristan, Dan and Princess Shutola. It turns out Kristoff was capturing slaves on Tristan's order. The Emperor is disappointed at the failure and worries this might start a war with the three neighboring kingdoms of Gon, Torridge, and Duramus, who are forming an alliance against them. Tristan suggests that they go to war, saying that they are stronger than the three kingdoms combined. Prince Asgrad supports the decision to go to war, also believing that they are stronger and wanting to test out his newly acquired pet. General Dan and the princess vote against starting a war, saying that the other nations may not be as weak as they think. With this deadlock, the Emperor decides that his fifth general Clive be the one to have the final vote. A soldier goes to the Magical Knight Order to notify Clive. He is creeped out by the women that stand frozen. He finds a number of women on the floor and he notifies Clive he is being summoned by the Emperor. Clive complains about it being a hassle but gets up, revealing himself. The kingdom of Tryson considers going to war with its neighboring kingdoms, and Kelvin hears from Leo that they've become increasingly aggressive against the Gon kingdom. Coincidentally, Leo gives Kelvin a mission for his promotion to S-rank. It's a request from the king of Gon to kill an S-ranked monster that threatens an elven village. As the party heads to the village, they suspect that Tryson might be involved. Suddenly their carriage is stopped by some elves, and Kelvin explains he's there on a request from the king. The chief of the elves, Nellas, appears and apologizes for their rudeness. He becomes shocked when he sees Ephiel, mistaking her for his own daughter, Lumel, but realizes his mistake. Kelvin becomes curious and asks to know more about Lumel. Nellas explains that 20 years ago, they were attacked by the Flame Dragon King, and Lumel offered herself as a sacrifice, becoming his bride to save the village. However, a few years later, Lumel was found dead in the forest, and fearing that the dragon might return, the elves fled to Gon. Sarah suggests that Aphil must be the child of Lumel and the dragon, but Melfina mentions that Aphil's father must be a human, stating how it would be impossible for an elf and a dragon to have a child. Regardless of who her parents are, Aphil is happy with the family she has now. Getting back to the mission, Nellis reveals that they've been attacked 3 times, and elves have been getting kidnapped. Kelvin finds it strange for the monsters to be kidnapping people. He comes up with a plan, and creates a stone barrier around the whole village. A group of Trison soldiers head towards the village with monsters somehow under their control. They ride on the monsters, boasting about their strength, but suddenly get shot at. They can't tell where they are being attacked from and panic. Aphil shoots from a tower, using her ultra-long-range archery magic. One of the soldiers reports to the commander about the dire situation, saying that their forces are being wiped out by unknown adventurers. They're found by Melfina and Rion, so the commander calls his strongest monster, the S-ranked Gigant Lord. An enormous giant awakens, and Melfina gives Rion the opportunity to fight alone and prove herself. Rion rushes up the giant's arm, but breaks her sword when trying to attack. She gets blown away, but is determined to prove herself. She calls for Clotho, taking out 3 new swords. Using a combination attack with her dog, she triple wields and takes out the giant. As it falls, the commander tells the giant to transform. It erupts with flames, revealing its true form. Sarah is disappointed she doesn't get to fight it, and Kelvin is confident in Rion. Rion is unfazed and attacks with her triple-wielding attack once more and defeats the monster. She celebrates with Melfina, as the commander cries at their defeat. As Kelvin and Aphil watch Rion from afar, they're attacked with a blast of energy, which Kelvin manages to block. General Clive appears before them, and Kelvin realizes he's a strong opponent and begins to get excited. Clive takes a liking to Aphil, and tries to hypnotize her into becoming his slave, but realizing his intentions, Kelvin stops him. He uses his appraisal skill and sees that Clive has a unique skill and must also be from another world. Clive is surprised they are both otherworlders, and Kelvin tells Aphil to retreat. She turns invisible and heads back to the village while Kelvin transforms the tower, creating 4 obsidian blades. Kelvin sends the blades to attack, but they are easily stopped by Clive's helix barrier. He knocks the blades away, and his knights attack Kelvin from behind. Kelvin notices that they are all under Clive's hypnosis, and Clive gloats about having Kelvin outnumbered, but an attack suddenly pierces through his barrier as Aphil shoots from below. Kelvin summons 4 golems to wield his blades and sends them to deal with Clive's knights. With the 2 alone, Clive summons his staff to fight Kelvin. They fly through the sky, firing magic at each other, and Clive chases after Kelvin. He fires a barrage of energy which Kelvin dodges, but the attacks land on his knights. Kelvin warns him, but Clive doesn't care, saying he has plenty of replacements. Kelvin ends the chase, and Clive brags about being able to do anything he wants with his powers. Kelvin is annoyed at his arrogance, and the 2 charge at each other. There's a huge clash, resulting in Kelvin's staff getting destroyed, and Clive getting a scar on his face. He freaks out about the scar, and swears to crush Kelvin with his strongest S-ranked spell. He gathers energy, and a deadly hurricane forms around him, sucking up everything nearby. With no other choice, Kelvin takes out his new staff, the S-ranked Black Disaster. He focuses his energy and transforms it into a scythe. He jumps toward Clive and cuts right through his magic, as well as severing both his legs. Before Kelvin can finish him off, he teleports away, getting saved by General Tristan. Tristan admits to being the one behind the attacks on the Elven village, but quickly teleports away. Kelvin is disappointed with the ending of his fight, but the elves celebrate their victory. Melfina, Sarah and Rion have a race back to Kelvin to see who he'll praise. Rion creates a new skill, winning the race, and Kelvin congratulates her on defeating the giant. Meanwhile in Trison, Clive wakes up to being chained up by Tristan. His legs have been healed, but he gets tortured by his own slaves, as Tristan experiments on him as an otherworlder. The elves have a feast to celebrate, but Kelvin watches from afar. Aphil joins him, and he expresses how lucky he feels to have his companions, deciding to get even stronger to protect them. Aphil is glad she got to learn more about her mother and even received a hair ornament that belonged to her from Nellis. Kelvin helps her put it on, and the rest of the party come to join them. An elf girl comes up to Kelvin, thanking him for protecting the village, but soon reveals he is the king of Gone, using a special item to change his form and observe him. He congratulates Kelvin and tells him he passed the S-rank promotion. The party congratulates him, and the king reveals there will be a promotion ceremony that includes a mock battle against other S-ranked adventurers. Upon hearing this, Kelvin can only smile, unable to contain himself, excited to fight against other strong adventurers. Unsurprised by his battle-loving nature, the party heads for more adventure. But that's where this story ends. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.